The Jim Channel Podcast, bringing you the big picture on geoscientific information management through interviews and discussions.
Hello, welcome to the latest episode of Acquire's podcast, The Jim Channel. I'm Sarah Mitchell, your host today, and I'm joined by Misha Stacker. Hi, Misha.
Hello.
And our guest is Federico Arboleda, Acquire's Commercial Product Manager. He's based in Phoenix, Arizona. Federico is involved in developing the commercial strategy and development of Acquire software products. Hi, Federico.
Hola. Thank you for having me, Sarah. Appreciate it.
Fed, tell us a little bit about your background.
I guess I started my career as a geologist in exploration. I was logging core in Niger is kind of the story I always tell to explain how I got into computers. And one night the computer died. Nobody knew how to fix it. My boss, for some reason, allowed me to give it a try. I fixed it, and since that day, I became a computer geologist, if that's such a thing. And I've always stayed around the area of computers, because I really wasn't a very good geologist, to tell you the truth.
That's a really big admission to make on audio that will be here for eternity. So, we're really pleased that you're involved in the software end of things now. So, what have you noticed as the biggest challenge for geoscientific information management, or GIM, when you started in the industry? And I guess we should talk about, you can address that either from when you started in the industry as a geologist or when you got into it from a software computer perspective. So what were your original observations about GIM?
I guess GIM didn't exist when I started. And the difficulty to create a new concept is the education, right? So we had to go through a period of explaining why Excel wasn't a database in the early days. And that's a very different conversation to what we do today. So now it's not about why can't I use Excel, it's about what GIM solution do I actually opt for? Because the industry has changed in the terms of maturity to understand that the value added by managing your geoscientific observations and measurements effectively is too great to not take on. If not, you'll just be left behind. So yeah, I guess the biggest change is it's really, the old days was educating people about why you needed to have something in place. Now it's about what you need to have in place and what are the characteristics that would make you successful in adopting a solution. And that's really what we do today, is have conversations around that. So I think that's how it's changed.
Okay, excellent. So just give us some context, too, about when you started. When you started, you said you started as a geologist and you moved into computers. But what do you, from the time you started, and then what do you see as the main challenges facing the natural resources industry today? So when you talked about education being the thing that is important, beginning when did you begin to see that?
So, I mean, there was a big trend as well. Now that we have adoption, there was also a period of stability in the marketplace where people were just going in and saying the fundamentals of data management are important, and we're going to reach that level where these fundamentals are mastered. What I believe is going on right now in the marketplace is that the trends of the digital data capture or digital sensors and other trends related to automation of knowledge, machine learning, are really beginning to change our marketplace in the minerals industry, because the minerals industry has been a laggard and hasn't really adopted these techniques, and they're coming into the marketplace and forcing this industry to have a different conversation that we've had. So before, I was kind of bitter and saying, well, we're never going to change in the mining industry. We're stuck where we're at. But now I'm seeing, no, change is coming, and it's going to be coming very quickly in terms of, new sensors being adopted and new workflows being adopted to accommodate those new sensors that are coming in. So the challenges are quite different, and adaptation is quite crucial in this in this particular time.
What do you think is the driver of that change?
Technology innovation, like the digital mind of the future, the plethora of people and startups who are just looking at how do I unbundle what used to be a single entity owning an entire workflow into different components of players who are trying to just take on the individual parts of the workflow. And they, startups actually, it's like bringing in innovation into the industry. That's what's driving these change. And the old established players are having to actually work and take on these new innovative ways of working, and have them participate, because there's no way of keeping them out. We just, those who don't want to play nice with others will not make it in this industry.
Okay, excellent. I'm glad you mentioned innovation, and it's something that we've talked about a lot in this podcast, and it's become a buzzword in the industry. Now, you've been in Perth recently to participate in the Unearthed Demo Day, and that's a movement, I think, almost that celebrates innovation in the global resources sector, and also showcasing the emerging startups in Australia. Now, we had a director from Unearthed join us on this podcast a little while ago, Zane Prickett, and he gave us some really great insights into their hackathon program, and what startups are doing that are interesting. What were some of the highlights from the demo day from your perspective?
Well, I really admire the initiative that Unearthed has, because they're doing something that maybe is not really appearing in the surface, which is they're educating people about, hey, it is possible to bring innovation into the mining industry. So I think I see first and foremost that the biggest value they're bringing is educating the public and having a conversation that reaches us all in the industry about how we can do things differently and drive innovation. So I guess that's kind of the first point there. What I saw is just enormous potential. There's just 6 amazing startups with 6 amazing ideas that will have the opportunity to revolutionize how we do things. However, one of the things that was mentioned at the event that just stuck with me is, what is the definition of a startup? And I'm probably going to butcher the definition as per the way that they expose it. But they said basically a startup is a temporary organization that is testing a business model. It's not a small company. It's not an SME. It's not, an organization that's going to work. It's just basically something that is set out to test a new idea and concept. So when you're doing that in the mining industry, and the mining industry is, vendor competence is a major thing. The cycle to sell into any site is about 6 years to a month. So when you have these contrasting initiatives, something that's basically trying to test the business model, and the mining industry here not able to receive it, then that's also a conversation that I'm really interested in seeing how it's going to play out. And what Unearthed is doing is that they're forcing the mining industry to educate themselves about startups and this ecosystem and how it could really give them a competitive advantage. And the mining industry is listening. If you go to all the majors, they have departments of innovation with budgets of in the millions of dollars, and they're using those budgets very wisely to tackle some of these initiatives. But the big challenge is, how do you make that ecosystem part of the entire system and have it add value? So that's
excellent. It sounds like it was a really interesting event. Now, I want to go back to get some perspective from you a little bit on the global mining industry. Now, you've lived in different places around the world. You're based in North America, in the U.S., but you do a lot of travel to South America as well. Are you seeing some of these challenges we've talked about today across the industry, or are they global challenges, or do you see the problems and the issues that miners are dealing with in different regions?
Yeah, it was really fascinating, this downturn, because what I saw happening was it kind of hit Australia first, but South America was going great. I mean, for the first 2 years in Australia, South America was still going very strong. And North America kind of like never was affected. They were just continuously to run. And I think what happened is that at the last downturn in North America, they cut to the level that they were producing very efficiently, and they didn't ramp up. And so basically what happened is that it allowed them to remain stable, and investment remained stable during this downturn. And there's still been a lot of activity in North America, in my opinion. In Australia, I think that, on the contrary, when there was the upswing, there was just an enormous amount of pressure on the prices of the people and commodities used to produce, whatever, gold or iron ore, and therefore we had to cut. And then the dip was way bigger. And why South America, I think, is being affected now is really associated to the copper price. That's really what began to affect it. So I guess those are kind of some of the observations that I can make with respect to what I saw globally.
Excellent. Now we're seeing that, especially with the downturn in South America, the Australian Institute of Geoscientists published an article that showed employment prospects for geoscientists have been improving gradually between June and September of this year, 2016. Do you think things are improving in Australia, or is the impact that we're seeing in other regions going to affect a global market? I mean, is copper going to have a knock-on effect into Australia, or do you think that the mining industry is getting smarter and there'll be more on an even keel?
This downturn, I think, as well, the upswing is really being driven by one commodity price. Where everybody's seeing it is in gold, right? Like gold right now is everyone is drilling, everybody's investing, and there's a lot of potential there. And I guess iron ore is now coming up, but because the investment was so big in iron ore, I just don't see that upswing coming out in that major commodity, which is Australia's major export, or one of the major exports. But gold is pushing. So anything that's gold in Australia, I think, is what's driving that upswing, and worldwide. In terms of the unemployment, I've been looking at those numbers as well from the IAG, and those are very encouraging because it's a trend, it's a consistent trend rather than a blip. And so it does look like things are going to be on the upswing. Now, the big question is, will we this time learn, right? Like, are we going to go on the upswing, rehire everyone at $300,000 salaries, and then suffer the consequences in 3 years when we can't support those costs? That's the fundamental question. So hopefully with innovation, with these new initiatives that we have in innovation, we'll be smart enough that we won't have to bring in that many people at those high salaries that are unsustainable, but rather we can actually begin to balance that with just efficiencies in the processes and driving efficiencies.
So, given all that, Fed, why do you think geoscientific information management is important, and what can it do to help miners?
Well, the fundamental observations and measurements, the single source of the truth that geoscientific information management is managing, is the basis for all this innovation and efficiencies to be driven. Without the fundamental data, then you can't do anything else, right? So it's the fundamental building block that is going to enable big data analysis, machine learning, all these efficiencies that we're actually trying to drive. You need this consolidated, validated, single source of the truth. And if you haven't been on this journey to adopt GIM and you aren't prepared for this, then you won't be able to get on that bandwagon. I mean, I remember talking to customers that basically say, oh, we have this consultant, they're coming in, they're going to be aggregating their data so we can mine it and get wonderful insights that are going to drive productivity in our operations. They try to do it, $1.5 million later, can't do it because the data was bad. The raw observations and measurements were bad, so those insights are basically, not valid. And the old familiar saying of, trash in, trash out, I guess, remains a reality even in today.
Is there a case to be made for investing in something like gym and gym technology, even in a downturn?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even in the downturn is where you should be actually preparing yourself, because you know the cyclic nature of the industry, right? You know it's going to go up again. You know that people are going to need the commodity. So the right time to invest is during the low cycle, where you have the headspace to actually prepare everything. When the upturn is going, you're just going crazy and you don't have time to think about these things. I just recently saw the commodity price for a company called Tech Cominco. They were $2 at the beginning of 2016. They're $27 today. And I looked at that when it was $2, and I basically said, you know, it's obvious that this investment is a very prudent investment, because people are going to need, you know, these commodities. And this is a company that's positioned itself within the mining industry and is very, very relevant. So I just can't understand how a company would be like that would be valued at $2. And fair enough, you know, like you could see that. It was obvious that trend came back. So again, you know, and I think that's what they were doing. They were investing during that period and make sure that their fundamentals were right. And when, you know, the commodity prices started to go up, they were able to harness those fundamentals that it put in place.
Okay. Let's do a little bit of blue sky thinking now. What do you think the industry will look like in 10 years from now, especially if we keep on this trend of innovation and the majors are starting to put money behind innovation, startups are starting to get a little bit of a traction within the organization. So what do you see happening in 10 years, or what would you like to see happen in 10 years?
I think that the ecosystem will change, where instead of one single player owning the entire value chain, where you have the material movement system and the gym and the mine planning system and the environmental system all owned by a single entity, it's actually going to unbundle. So instead of bundling, I think what we're going to see is an unbundling of the industry, of going to best in breed systems, where the gyms are going to be independent of the general mine planning systems, which are going to be independent of the other systems in the mine operations. But what's going to have the transformation that's going to happen is that connectivity and I guess protocols for communication are going to be enabled, so all these best of breed technologies can actually talk to each other in that 10-year future. And that is really going to enable us to look at things in different ways, because you're going to have specialists in each of these fields which are looking at the problems in different ways. Because, you know, like if you're trying to solve the entire problem, you can't be as innovative if you're just looking at one particular part of the problem. You don't have the mindset, you know? But yeah, specialization is a fundamental change that I believe is going to come into play, and the unbundling of the industry into best of breed players, and that's a trend that we've began to see as well.
So specialization and niche solutions working together.
Correct.
Excellent. What's getting you excited about the mining industry and the natural resources industry right now?
Everything. I just think that this is such an amazing time to be part of this industry, because the potential is so enormous, you know? It hasn't been really reaped, that potential. And being part of that transformation is so exciting for us. And seeing how we can help and make a difference and add value and, you know, assist our clients as part of that transformation is so exciting. And we actually are very well positioned to do that. So I guess that makes it even more relevant for us, you know, that we can really drive change and make a difference. That gets me out of bed every day and makes me want to do better.
Well, that's really great to hear. So thank you so much for joining us today. And we look forward to hearing from you in the future about what's happening, especially around the innovation side of mining.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. You've been listening to Acquire's podcast, The Gym Channel. Find us at acquire.com.au.